All right, I am at the Bayard Cutting Arboretum here in Islip, New York. The dahlias are in full bloom. I've showed you some video clips here. They are stunning today. So I wanted to get out here and try to capture them a little bit. So I'm here and I've got the scene over here I'm going to work on, and I've done a thumbnail sketch. And what I really like about this is the strong dark value that is supporting the dahlias behind them. And then how the sun is just hitting this passage in here and a little on the path. So I'm going to use it to lead in that way, and then use the rest of this middle tone value to help support that highlighted area. So I think it's going to be an interesting one, and thank you for joining. All right, and remember, if you like what you saw, to like and subscribe at the end. All right, here we go, jumping in. Got my paper towels down here. I have my palette set up. This is an open M design easel. I like it especially for doing these videos because you can see what I'm mixing. Right, so what I have here is my standard colors, titanium white, and I threw on another yellow ochre here, cadmium yellow medium, and a cadmium yellow lemon, because I thought that together that I might get some more of that more intense dahlia color. I have my burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, Alizarin Crimson, and then Pthalo Green. So let's see what we can come up with. I'm keeping my thumbnail sketch handy so that I can refer to that. I have my linseed oil over here, just clipped to the side of my easel, and then on this side, hanging from a little bucket, is my Gamblin solvent. And that's all I use. Paper towels, I'm all set. Just gonna take a size 4 flat. It's actually a filbert now, but at one time it was a flat. And I'm going to draw it on, keeping my drawing right handy, just like that, something like that. Inky mixture of Gamsol. I'll just use some just burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, a little bit like that. And this is double oil prime linen, and I just taped it to a board. It's totally acceptable. I get back to the studio, I can glue the painting onto another masonite panel, and we're all set. So referring to my thumbnail sketch, I have this coming in this way. That's going. This is going to be in shadow. All I'm seeking to do is just to connect my values and my darks and middle tones. So as they come around like this. According to my thumbnail sketch. Gotta work quickly because the light's gonna really change fast. little sounds the chickens make. I had a pet chicken growing up. Her name was Amelia, and she was one of these Rhode Island Reds. I'll show you. See the little chicken coop? Love them. Alright, back to work. Once I have this established where I'm comfortable with the overall design and layout, I don't need to have my thumbnail sketches handy anymore. So just going to try to get these values back here as dark as I see them. When I squint at this whole background of all of these pine trees back here, I just kind of want to get the overall feel. I don't need all the detail of all the trees. If I had more time, I would like to put them in, but I try to keep these a little bit shorter. To the point. So as tempting as all that is, I really want to just capture and focus on these flowers in here and how they just play like music notes in this picture. So far I'm just using Ultramarine Blue, a little bit of yellow ochre, and burnt Pthalo Green to get some of this cooler green tone back here. Alright, so just gonna hit some of these. I did have my darker values down here a little darker, so I'm gonna hit those a little darker. I think that it has a nice balance with this little bit of dark over here. If you can, just kind of a glare on it. See how it's darker now in here. Just a teeny bit of Gamsol. Grabbing that. It's really interesting patterns of shadows on the ground. I'm going to play with those in a little while. Alright, so I think this gives me a direction to go in. Alright, so now I'm going to jump in. I'm done with my thumbnail sketch. All of the thinking is done with that, so I can't underscore enough how important it is to do those thumbnails. It'll save you a lot of time. I'm going to use just a size 6 flat. This is a synthetic and I like it because it holds a chiseled edge. I may jump back and forth between my smaller one and this one, but I think I'm going to put the rest of these away for now. They're all about the same size anyway. So here we go. I may even just kind of leave that background for now, just as it is, and then I'll get into some of these big, bold patches of that spring green color. Okay, so let's grab some yellow. And I always take a little bit of the color and a little bit of this color, and I paint them together instead of mixing both of those together, because I don't know how much exactly I'll need of this or that, so I'll paint the two colors together and gauge from that perspective. So looking back here, I'm squinting down at that whole passage of these dahlias as they come through, and I see it down below being a little bit cooler green back there. So by cooler, I'm going to add a little bit more blue to that. And as it moves over towards the light, towards me, I'm going to add a little bit of white to this green mixture. That will continue to cool it. It'll also sort of lighten it a little bit. I don't always prefer to use white to lighten something. I'd rather use another color, but in this case, the sunlight is hitting these leaves and they are really sort of that chalky white look on them. And the only way to paint something this complicated is to squint down at it. You're going to simplify everything and see the large masses of colors and shapes. And so that's what I'm doing. You can't see my eyes, but I'm going. And then I can always take the background and sculpt out of these leaves some more of the leaf shapes and things. So I'm going to get that leaf color back in that passage back over there, a little bit of that. You can see how I'm just kind of painting the colors together till I feel it's it. just a few brush strokes per load. Go back, mix up a little more, or alter your colors. Can't wait to get those flowers in. They're so pretty today. Taking some of that lemon yellow and a little white. As the wind is just blowing these, kind of creating that little brush stroke. A little bit more of that springier green over here, and that's that lemon yellow. And that is by Winsor Newton. Most of these colors that I use are through Gamblin, but that yellow is through Winsor Newton. And if you see me jump around, it's because the color that I have on my brush, I can see it in other places. So I want to try to just use that elsewhere too. This one, we're getting some of that yellow ochre into that green mixture for over here. So it's a little more. Let's grab some of that cadmium yellow medium into there. Squinting down. It's the only way you're going to be able to get these. I want that a little darker underneath. Taking the Ultramarine Blue and burnt Sienna, some linseed oil. Gonna hit that really dark right in there. Squinting down. The best way to neutralize a color is to use its complement. And in this case, the opposite of green is red. And so I will use burnt sienna, being part of the red family, to help neutralize that green. It helps to make it a little bit darker instead of using like a black, or sometimes a blue wouldn't work to darken a color, so you have to use its complement. Use that over here too. Keeping the brush light, I'm thinking about flowers dancing in the wind and these different little movements that are going on. If you think of those while you're painting them, you're more likely to capture those. This color I have, I'm going to put a little bit more blue and white in shadows on the grass. I really want to get these interesting shapes in before the sun moves them. It's a little too dark. So wiping that off, and a little bit more white into that, just a little. Blue, get those beautiful blues in those shadows. Yeah, that's better. To look like the image before me. I want to, before I jump into much more of this, and I can always sculpt up these shapes a little bit more as I move through the painting, I want to get this stronger now back here because it's real brush strokey, and it's going to kind of break up that solid, interesting sort of value thing there that I want going on. Calmer, quieter. more supportive background. So I'm just taking Ultramarine Blue, burnt Sienna, and putting that right into the green mixture that I had. And I want it in some key spots because I'm thinking about the focal point as the eye travels through this painting, and I want it really to play in here. Since the eye is drawn to the area of the greatest contrast, I am going to push these darks back here a little bit darker than I see them so that these flowers and this green can really go pow like that. Sometimes with landscape painting you can't be super literal. Sort of push some boundaries to really make your story clear. And you can add some subtle changes throughout there. Like that. So maybe as the light moves through here in the background, I can suggest some pine trees. Just as I see a little bit. I have to move out of the way because I'm really in the shadow here. Just enough so it's not distracting. And don't be afraid to use a lot of paint. Again, you know, landscape painting is all about time efficiency, and you don't have a lot of time before everything starts to really change on you, so you really got to get those pieces in place right away. By having enough paint out, you can do that. You don't have to stop and mix more. It's kind of annoying. Okay. So I'm going to get some of this green down here, the green grass. Windy! It's windy today! I'll stop for a minute and put my bungee cord for my paper towels. I hang my bungee cord like this, my paper towels on a little bungee like this. What I'm going to do instead, since it is so windy, I'm going to take this bungee cord out and I'm going to wrap it around the tripod legs of my easel here and hang my backpack from it so that my easel is a little bit more stable. And we shouldn't have a problem. Famous last words. I'll show you what I just did. So I hung it up like that. There's my backpack. All these little problems, some solutions to plein air painting. Little tricks. Okay, so I got my paper towels here. Back in the game. So I'm looking at this grass as the sun is hitting it, and it's got this beautiful green glow. So I'm going to just try to catch some of that in here. And I like to make a really bright green with a little bit of phthalo green and some yellow. When I have this really hitting something really intense, especially when I was in Ireland. Just recently here, I was able to get some of those really bright greens with the different cadmium yellows. And in this case, I just used some cad lemon with that, a little bit of that phthalo green, and it's like a spring green. It's so pretty. So let's just put some of that in there. It'll lead the eye this way. A little bit will tone it down a little. You know, that's getting thick, so that's when I want to add a little bit of linseed oil just to help loosen that up a bit because it can tend to get thick on you. Oops. By altering your shades, and you can see how much I go back to my palette to pick up a different shade of green, just as the light moves closer to us, I'll make it a little warmer, add a little more yellow ochre, a little more burnt sienna, things like that. Just a little bit to give this feeling of this coming at us, and then I'll make it cooler and bluer as it goes away, that illusion of distance. So this back here is almost like a sage green. And I'm using horizontal strokes to give it that illusion of like a tabletop. When you're doing grounds or anything flat, use a horizontal stroke, like that. And anything closer to you is going to have more color, more brush strokes, more contrast. So just keep that in mind as you make those decisions. Get some of this browner, warmer tones down in here because the sun and the path and things like that have worn it out a little bit. Grabbing a little bit of colors and I just sort of mix them together and I lay those down on top of the greens. And if you lay it down on top of another color loosely and gently, it'll stay on. But if you scrub it in, the colors will mix and you'll get a muddy color. Or you might get an effect that you were looking for, you wanting the colors to mix. So you just have to be careful and cognizant of the way that you're laying the paint down, what's happening at the end of the brush. Do I have a glare on there? Okay. So I'm squinting at the path and I'm seeing these tones, lighter tones of dirt and stuff where the people have walked. So I want to just try to capture some of that look of it, looking like it's been a worn path. And over here I'm adding a little bit of cadmium yellow to it to really get that look of sunspots. And while I have this color, which I think is pretty close to the boards, I'm going to add a little bit of blue to it to cool it down and make it look like wood. Grabbing some blue, some oil, and I'll paint those colors together to see where I'm at. I don't mix the whole pile of blue into it, just a little bit. So looking at this. Now I'm going to grab some more of that. Oh, I want more blue. That's better. Press down a little more like that to get that look of a thicker board. Okay. And I'm going to use that for the board in front here, darker, because it's mostly in shadow. I want more blue in there. Okay. Let's get in a little bit of highlight on top of the boards. White. Just right into that mixture that I had over here. A little bit more. And because I'm using this flat synthetic, I get it into a nice chiseled edge like that. And get that really thin back there. And over here. Okay. It's coming together. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. The board coming this way. Clean this off. Stark. Let's get that a little thicker. I do want to capture that little bird bath with the flowers in it, so I'm going to grab that here real quick. shadow cast by that. Flowers in there real quick. A little bit of white and yellow. Bit of alizarin into that white. You can see that down there. Sienna, yellow ochre, white, ultramarine blue. Letting the light just sort of trickle beyond the stems back in here. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre, or cab yellow medium, burnt sienna, some oil. I just think this should be a little richer and brighter in here. White. Alright, now I'm going to make these a little bit, the shadow's a little bit more violet tone. So, just to add some richer color in. Back in here. Get a little bit lighter blue shadows. Sun's really hitting. So now, the part we've all been waiting for is these flowers. So I'm going to take my smaller brush and I'm going to think about where I want them in relation to this whole composition and as they lead through the painting. Do some white and let's get some lemon. I paint those colors together. I know you can't really see on there, but there. Paint those two colors together. Make some decisions. I guess one lives here. And I will come back in through here and add more detail to each one of these. But for now, I just really want to catch the feeling of where these are going to live. And I'm kind of using this comma shape to get that feeling of when I squint at them over there, what they look like. Okay, a little bit, sometimes some of them are a little less white and more yellow. Again, if you have a big enough pile mixed up, you can scoop into that like that. Just take it out. Okay. And then it won't mix with the colors underneath. Some more white and mix in some of this pink that I already had to get some of these peachier tones. Nice thick pile. I see these in here just so pretty like that. And over here, there's some down in here. A little peeking back in through there. Okay. And then I'm going to, right into that, grab a little bit more of the Alizarin Crimson and painting that right into there to get some of these big, bright, beautiful colors up here. Wipe, scoop. All the time I'm trying to think about how they are going to play in here like music notes. Some of these down here as the sun is just hitting these. They're so pretty. Another one over here. And I'm seeing some of them over here, little ones. Okay, wipe my brush off, getting some more blue into that mixture of white, and alizarin. A little bit of blue will give me that darker, richer, velvety color of these. And I see them over here. Some more. Let's grab some white. Get some of these softer, more mauve colors in here. I did see a few peeking over here. Let's get that over here. All right. So just taking some greens here, just highlighting some of these passages where the leaves, I want a little bit more sparkle on them. All right, just softening some of these edges where the flowers met the background. cleaning this off. Pull out a few petals, just a few. Alright, well that wraps it up. I wanted to thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that this has been a fun and interesting one. If you liked what you saw, go ahead and like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Alright, thanks so much guys. Bye-bye.